We're going to talk about the hardest, most stressful parts of 68 Whiskey Combat Medic AIT. But without further ado, let's get to it. What is up, guys? Ben Allen back again with another video, and like I just said, we're going to be talking about some of the hardest, most stressful things you will be going through as a 68 Whiskey Combat Medic in AIT, right? AIT for 68 Whiskeys at Fort Sam Houston in Texas. It was a great time. I enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot. But before we jump into the main topic, a little bit about myself. My name is Ben Allen Alvarado. I did 4 years active duty in the Army as a 68 Whiskey myself. I have 4 years of active duty experience. I got out in September 2019, did a month or two on the civilian side, and decided to join the reserves. I've been in the reserves now for about a year, so I have that active duty knowledge, that reserve knowledge, and anything you guys might want to know I could possibly have an answer for. So the best way to reach me if you have questions and you want those questions answered is either in the comment section down below. Anything you guys want to know, let me know. I can make a video on it. Or the best way you guys can reach me is through my Instagram at Ben_Allen175. Best possible place to reach me. I get a majority of my questions through there, and I answer them, as many as I can, the best that I can. But with all that out of the way, guys, being a 68 Whiskey myself, I figured I'd make this video and talk about some of the most stressful, some of the hardest, most stressful things I personally went through in AIT and what I saw a bunch of my battle buddies go through in AIT. So again, this is just my opinion. If you guys have other things that you may feel are harder in 68 Whiskey AIT, let me know. Drop them down in the comment section. We can talk about it. Training is different for everybody, right? So what's hard for me may not be hard for you. What's hard for you may not be hard for me, right? But jumping into it, guys, straight off the bat, 68 Whiskey AIT is fun for the most part. Like, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about medical knowledge and about myself as well. So that's one of the key things that I took away, is just the growth as an individual and the growth as a soldier and the growth as a future medic. All of those were instrumental into where I currently am in my military career, as well as where I was in active duty and so on and so forth, right? So everything you learn there is definitely important. Be sure to listen to your instructors, take all that knowledge in, because they know what they're talking about, for the most part anyway, right? Your instructors know best, always, for the most part. If you have questions, feel free to ask them questions. They're there to answer your questions, right? But with that little spiel out of the way, right? So the hardest parts that I witnessed people go through, and some of the hardest things that I went through in AIT, especially happened in the EMT phase. To me personally, I think everything after the EMT phase was a little easy. It was because it was more focused on what you're going to be doing as a combat medic, right? The whole whiskey side of training to me was fun. I had a blast doing it. We were outdoors. But the EMT portion is they're cramming this big book. It was the 13th edition while I was there. I've been recently told that they upgraded to the 14th edition EMT or emergency care book, but this EMT phase is 6 weeks long, guys, and they're cramming this whole big book in there. You have to learn, you have to study it, and you're having a test like every week, if not 2 tests every week on these modules, right? And each module consists of a different thing that you've been through or have been studying from that 13th edition emergency care book and whatever they've been teaching you in class, right? You have quizzes every now and then as well, but those really don't count towards an average. It's just the tests themselves that are whether you pass or fail, right? And to me, this was hard because to myself primarily, and to a lot of my other battle buddies, because the amount of time you get to study is completely dependent on how much time you're giving yourself to study, because you're waking up about 4:30. At least it was 4:30 for us. We're doing PT, like we have formation at like 4:30, or wake up is at 4:30, and we're in formation by like 4:45, 5, around that time, and we're doing PT by like 5:15 or something like that. And PT can go anywhere from like an hour and a half. It just depends on the day and the platoon sergeant or sergeant that's leading PT. And so you're up already by 4:30 going on. Once you come back, you get like an hour maybe for personal hygiene. So you shower, go to the restroom, do whatever you need to do, get your uniform ready, and make sure you're looking spiffy for the day, right? And then you go to the DFAC for breakfast, and you're going, you eat your food, and then after the DFAC, you go straight to the schoolhouse for EMT phase, and you're there from lunch until like maybe 6 o'clock, and then you get lunch, or you get dinner. You get lunch while you're there, and then you get dinner. Afterwards, you go to the defect, all that stuff. You have mail call, and then finally by maybe like 6:30, maybe 7. It just depends, right? It varies. Every company's different. The schedule's different. So don't quote me on any of this, okay? But this is just how it was for us. And by the time you're off, you're tired, you're exhausted, and you're like, oh, I just want to go to bed. Or some of you guys might even want to go to the gym, get your lift in, right? And this right here, your free time, is where you need to study, because the studying is what plays a big factor, guys, into whether you're going to pass these EMT phase tests and ultimately the NREMT at the end of the EMT phase, right? Because if you don't study, you're not going to grasp the material, you're not going to understand fully, you know, what it is that they're trying to teach you. Some people are blessed, they don't have to study, they're good, they retain information, they can pass 100%. But me personally, the struggle was trying to find that balance of free time as well as study time. And this is really difficult because a lot of people don't know how to do that. They get so caught up in the free time, like they get their phones when they're out, they can go on their computers, Xbox, whatever, and they get sucked into the electronics, they get sucked into talking to family members, and they don't put enough time into studying. And this is where it's really detrimental, because if you're not putting the time into study, the results are going to show on those quizzes, on those tests, and then ultimately once you get to the NREMT portion, that's when it really shows. And the NREMT portion is probably the hardest part of it all, most stressful part as well, and I'll get into that once I finish covering the EMT phase portion tests. But pretty much, yeah, so studying is essential, and I think that's what really makes it difficult and hard in EMT phase, because you have to study. If not, you're kissing your chances of passing goodbye. Granted, you get 2 tries on the test, I believe, to take it. You fail once, you get a retest. You fail the retest, is no bueno. I forget the specific number of tests that you have to fail in order to get recycled. And being recycled means pretty much you're going to leave the company you're at. You're going to go back to an earlier company that is probably before they even have started EMT phase, and you're going to go through that whole process again. You fail it again, then you're going to get reclassed, and you do not want to get reclassed. It means you cannot be a medic. You're going to have to pick a different MOS. Usually what's available, and usually what's available is something really good or something that you want. It happens all the time, trust me. But yeah, really learn how to key in on your study habits and get those dialed in, because if you do not, the EMT phase is probably going to be your most hated, hardest, most stressful portion of all of 68 Whiskey AIT. I've seen it happen, right? And that's that portion, right? That's one of the harder portions, is EMT phase and the whole studying and finding the time to study. What comes after, right? Once you finish your final for EMT phase, once you finish studying, all that type of stuff, comes the NREMT, right? This is what EMT phase was leading up to. The big, bad NREMT, which is the test that certifies you to be an EMT, pretty much EMT basic. This is the one you need to pass. You need to pass this test. If not, then it's not a good time. And this, to me, was the most stressful part of 68 Whiskey AIT, because you're thinking like, oh my God, like and it's an adaptive test too, so it's adapting to you. If you're doing really well, it's gonna give you harder answers, and it's gonna make the test progressively harder as you go on. But if you're doing really bad, it's going to give you a couple of easy questions here and there to help average you out and hopefully get you to pass. And everybody's freaking out about it because they don't know. It can stop you at like 75 questions, I believe, or like 112. It was like in the high hundreds. Some people were getting like 100 some questions. They were thinking, oh my God, I failed. Some people got 70 questions. They're like, oh my God, I passed. And turns out people with 100 some questions were passing, 70 some questions were failing, vice versa. It's just, there's really no like sure way of determining, right? And we took it on a Friday, meaning we wouldn't know until the weekend after that Friday. So that whole weekend we had to go without knowing our test results, and I had nightmares about this. I was so stressed out. I was like, oh my God, I didn't pass, I didn't do good, I failed, this is horrible. Come Monday, I find out that I passed on my first try. Spoiler alert, I got first time goes on everything, so I was really fortunate enough to do that, but I attribute that to my study habits and just staying focused on graduating and, you know, doing everything on the first time, because I'm a perfectionist. I want to get first time goes on everything, you know what I mean? But yeah, and it was shitty because I got my first time go on the NREMT and a bunch of my other buddies did, but what really sucked was seeing my friends that didn't get their first time goes, and they were bummed out. It took a real hit on their morale and their mental health and just their overall attitude towards the whole 68 Whiskey course. Like, some of them were like, you know what, I'm just kind of done. Like, I don't want to do this again. Because imagine like studying, right? And passing EMT phase, you pass your final, you do all that, and you're taking the NRMT. You're like, yes, I'm in. This is good. It's a sure thing. And then God's like, no, sorry, fucking canceled. Like, you're not passing the first go. And so you get 2 more tries for the NRMT, right? You get 3 tries total. Third try, not good. Back when I went through, it was if you failed the 3rd time, you got reclassed. There was no recycling. It was straight reclass. You could not be a medic. You had to pick a different MOS, and you have to go through the AIT process for that MOS all over again from the very beginning. So it's not fun. And I had people that took it a 2nd time and still did not pass. And they were like worried. They were like, oh my God, like I have 1 more try to do it. And, you know, granted, some people got it on their 3rd try. Lucky them, they did it. And then there was the ones that didn't pass on their 3rd try. And this is where it took a toll. Some of them were just defeated. They were sad. They were just completely done with being a 6-8 whiskey, both, you know, figuratively and literally, because they, in their minds, are like, well, I'm not going to be 6-8 whiskey. And then literally they're getting reclassed into a different MOS because they did not meet the standards. They did not pass the NRMT, so they could not get certified to move on with the training. And to me, that's the most stressful time in 6-8 whiskey AIT, is the NREMT portion, because everything else, you know, you can fail 3 times, you'll get reclassed. I mean, you'll get recycled, right? So you still have a chance of being a 6-8 whiskey, but the NREMT, 3 tries, 3 strikes, you're out pretty much, and you have to pick a different MOS. And seeing people leave that you had just bonded with throughout the whole experience in 6-8 whiskey AIT was, you know, a little heartbreaking, because, you know, 1, for the people that have to say goodbye to their friends, and then 2, for the actual individual themselves that, you know, have to live with knowing that they couldn't make it that go around. You know, who's to say they can't come back later and try again, right? But knowing that they didn't get to be a 6-8 whiskey, now they have to go do a completely different MOS, and that's pretty stressful. That's pretty shitty. So it all comes down to studying, guys. Really study. And just some pro tips for the NREMT, just in case you guys want them. I can make a video on it if you want, a whole video going over NREMT stuff. But go in order of your assessment. That really helped me out. And when in doubt, O2 and transport is a good solid pick. I promise you. I went with O2 and transport a lot on a lot of the questions I got for my NREMT exam. But with that being said, that's the NREMT portion. It's stressful. It's stressful. Hardest part was the EMT studying phase and the test 1 to 2 tests every week. That, to me, that was the hard part. The stressful part was the NREMT. Hated it. It was just like not knowing if you're gonna pass, and just constantly dreading, like, am I good enough? Did I get this? Did I pass my first try? Awesome. And then we'll go into the last thing, guys. This is one of the final things I'll talk about, and this is all skills. This is the skills you learn, whether, you know, you learn some things in EMT phase, you learn some things in whiskey phase, right? Usually it's the whiskey phase where you do, you know, the combat all skills, and like such as the tourniquet, you know, your emergency pressure bandage, all this type of stuff, your medical assessment, your trauma assessment, all this. And a lot of people get stressed out, and a lot of people don't get first time goes because they miss a step, or they don't verbalize something, or they do something out of order, and they have to knock you and say, like, oh, that was a key criteria, you didn't pass this go around, and you have to keep going again. Granted, I got all first time goes on my all skills, but it was still hard studying for this, like practicing hours and hours and hours and hours in your room, in your barracks room, your dorm room, whatever you want to call it, right? And just going over it, because practice makes permanent, right? And so you got to keep going. And I did that, luckily. But other people, it was really hard because, you know, they knew what they had to do. They just could not, like, do it the right way, right? And then they say, oh, you didn't get a first time go, and they're like, oh, it's because I missed this, right? And they're like, yes, because they know what they missed. It's just a matter of they're either flustered, they're nervous, and like, you're your own worst enemy during all skills, if that makes sense, because you're like, oh my God, I missed that, and you're just kind of thinking, like, how could I miss that? That was so simple. Then you go back a second time and you kill it, because you know what you had to do. It's just a matter of thinking that you know it and knowing that you know it, if that makes sense. I know I'm scattered all over the place right now, but it's just, if you're a 68 whiskey and you're going through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just that self-doubt, and it's kind of like wait, did I miss a step or not? But that's probably one of the hardest things as well, is remembering your steps for all skills and actually applying them in the correct order when you're doing the actual all skills validation. But have no fear. If you guys are struggling with your all skills, if you feel like you're not ready, or you just want a visual representation of what it should look like, I have videos going over every single all skills that you guys get tested on for the most part, except for the SAM junctional. I could not find the equipment for a SAM junctional, so I could not put that video out there, but I have tourniquet, I have the ETB, I have the crike, I have the NPA, I have the burn dressing, I have everything required for all skills, guys. So it's a pretty good individual skills validations, right? ISVs, they call them all skills, ISVs, same thing, but feel free to check those out on my channel. I'll link them in the description, or you can just type in Ben Allen 68 Whiskey All Skills. It's a good time. But with that being said, guys, those are primarily the hardest, most stressful times as a 68 Whiskey. Camp Bullis, honestly, to me wasn't stressful because it was a culmination of everything you learned. If you made it to Camp Bullis, chances are you're going to pass, you're going to become a 68 Whiskey, right? You just got to do your final trauma assessment and get goes on your patrols and everything, but Camp Bullis will be its own separate video, okay? So let me know if you want that. Just comment Camp Bullis down below. I'll make a video about that because it has changed. It used to be 14 days, but now apparently it's only 9 days, and they do some crazy new stuff that I just got info on from somebody that just went through Camp Bullis, like currently, like a week ago, I think. But that's a video for another day. So just to recap, right, some of the hardest, most stressful things is EMT phase. You really gotta narrow down on studying and making sure you know your stuff, because those tests, the one you get every week or twice a week maybe, can really be killer. You do not want to fail those tests. The final, little tip for the final, it's the same questions from your test, just reused and just culminated into a big old final test of 100 questions. So there you go. You can thank me later for that one. And then second is the most stressful thing is the NREMT, right? Because you're doubting yourself. You're thinking, oh my God, am I going to pass? Am I going to fail? This, that, and the other, right? And then the last thing, which is all skills, you know, ISVs, individual skills validations, when you're testing out on these particular skills, because, you know, either you know it or you don't, or you think you know it and you get it wrong, or you 100% know it but you screw up on saying something and you miss one step and you get like, oh, sorry, that's not a first time go. Granted, you're allowed to miss some steps on some of these skills. It's just certain steps are considered key criteria, which you have to do in order to get a go on that skill. But those are my 3 things. If you disagree, let me know in the comment section. If you agree, awesome, give this video a thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up regardless, right? And let me know, what are you guys most excited for about 68 Whiskey Combat Medic AIT? Is it actually working on pretend casualties? Is it getting certified as an EMT? Is it going to the field and practicing everything you've learned? And just in general, what made you want to be a 68 Whiskey, guys? Be sure to subscribe. Let me know what more content you want to see from this channel. I have a bunch of 68 Whiskey content. If you guys want it, I can give it to you. I can make more, but I got to hear from you guys. What do you want from the Ben Allen channel? To all of you guys getting ready to ship out, go to basic or AIT, best of luck. I wish you the best. And just remember, study, it's important. With all that said, guys, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram at Ben_Allen175. It's the best possible place to reach me. I answer all my questions there. And yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. We're almost to 25,000, so you guys can help us out by smashing the like button and smashing the subscribe button. I'll leave you all with some videos here talking about basic training, you know, the first 100 yards, no more shark attack, and the new yellow phase in basic as well. I'll see you on the next one. Later.